tonight. Thanks for the organisers as well. I know I'm in the precarious situation of being between you and drinks, so I'll be as clear and as precise as I can, not keep you too long. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I want to tell you a little bit about the update from Orphan. And like the first speaker, maybe a lot of you don't know what orphan products are, so maybe I'll start by saying that. Orphan products, it's a designation that are given to certain drugs that are approved in the US and in Europe that are used to treat rare diseases. Now, rare diseases are defined as affecting 1 in 2,000 people or less. So you might say that's a very small market. But in fact, if you look at it globally, 300 million people globally suffer from rare diseases. In Europe alone, there's 30 million people suffering from rare diseases. So it's a big market. Orphan, what we're doing, we're an orphan services company focused on orphan products that are coming from pharmaceutical companies and bringing them to market through clinical trials, consulting for trial design, reimbursement, and regulatory approval. So I'll go through the next few slides and really kind of bring you through where we're at. So I guess most of you know the story a little bit about Orphan. We had a reverse takeover of Venn Life Sciences in June. This is the management team that is now running Orphan. Cathal Friel, now Cathal is the CEO. He's not here tonight. He's over at a competing event in Proactive. So I'm here talking a little bit about what we're doing. But Cathal is a stockbroker by heart. He's been in the markets both in Ireland and the UK many times. He's done 3 reverse takeovers. His most recent one, apart from Orphan, is with Amryt Pharma. Amryt is now acquiring Gerion. It's a US company. They're in the orphan space as well. And they're going to be listed on NASDAQ in the next month at about a 300 million valuation. So he's used to being involved in really good deals that are profitable and have a good return for both the products, but also the investors and shareholders. He's also involved in Raglan Capital, which established Orphan in 2006. So it has been going together with Brendan Buckley, our chairman, and myself. We founded in 2016. And Fastnet would be another one of his kind of reverse takeovers going on to market with a very significant capitalization. So a lot of stockbroker financial expertise. Brendan Buckley, our chairman, has worked with ICON, a large Irish-based clinical trials research organization, a CRO, again about valued at $8 billion. It kind of competes with IQVIA and Parexel, for example, globally in the pharma services company. So again, Brendan would have come from ICON as Chief Medical Officer. He also worked with the EMA, the European Medical Agency, in really putting the protocol together of how orphan products would be regulated across the EU. And myself, a serial entrepreneur by training. I've had 3 companies, Hybrogen, GMI, and now Orphan. I'll talk about GMI, which is the most recent one. So GMI, Genomics Medicine Ireland, again looking at the genetic population of the Irish population to really unravel the genetics of rare diseases. We were acquired by Wuxi Nextcode in November of last year, and that was following a 400 million Series B investment into the company. So again, myself, Cathal, Brendan, we've all been involved in very innovative companies that have had a good exit. We all know the space from a financial perspective, and we know the the orphan product market as well as the rare disease space. So that's a little bit about the leadership team. I guess what we're doing, so we acquired Venn, or we did a reverse takeover of Venn in June of this year. Venn is an interesting company, however, it was really badly managed. And so over the last quarter, and this is the update, we have been transforming Venn to be a more profitable company and getting new customers. So it is addressing the staff utilization, property issues, and really some kind of management issues that were now corrected. Most of the people that were associated with Venn, some of them are still there, but there has been a rationalization of staff as well. So there's a lot going on in Venn, and I can give you a little bit more as we go through the talk. We're bolting on companies into the new company of Orphan. So again, I'll talk to you a little bit about the opportunity that is orphan products in the next few slides. And we want to be the pan-European service provider for orphan products across Europe. And I'll tell you how we're going to do that. We also have a virtual rep digital engagement platform that we're rolling out from the company. This is going to really bring these new orphan products we're bringing to Europe to the attention and the awareness of the key opinion leaders and clinicians across Europe who write the prescriptions for patients for these products. And finally, I'll talk to you a little bit about the health data platform. This is the platform that I'm really driving, and it really is corralling the genetic data associated with rare disease patients across Europe into a database that will be accessible by pharmaceutical companies to drive research for new orphan drug products. So that's a quick summation. So I want to come back a little bit to orphan drugs and what is the situation and the legislation and why is it the fastest growing segment of the pharma market. So for example, last year in 2018, 58%, more than half, of all the products approved by the FDA were orphan drug products. The reason why, and as a result, there's a huge consulting kind of market associated with that, highly fragmented, large consulting market in the US, very active CAGR, compound annual growth rate, huge amount of products in the pipeline for approval in the US, 2,500, which will be our pipeline of products going forward. And like I said, 30 million people in Europe affected by rare diseases. But the next slide, I think, is probably the most compelling. So it is the fastest growing segment of the market, about to grow twice as fast as any of the other non-orphan products. Once you get orphan designation, so again, like I said, these are products that are used to treat rare disease. You get 7 years exclusivity in the US, 10 in Europe, and that's on top of your intellectual property position. So you have market exclusivity for many years. The pricing, and I think you might have heard some of this in our first speaker with Reneuron, the price you can garner for these products is about 4.5 times higher than non-orphan products. You get significant fast tracking of reviews, smaller clinical trials, and often you don't have to go to phase 2, like we heard before. And in the US especially, all these products, all the research and development costs you pay, or you incur for these products are tax deductible. So these were put in place to really incentivize companies to derive these products, because people, without these incentives, they would have considered the market too small to really go into that sector. So that's kind of been in place since '99 in the US and Europe. There was an early orphan drug legislation, as it's called, and that's hence the name. That was in place by '83 in the US, but there's a kind of a consistent approach now between Europe and US since '99, and it's taken about those 15, 20 years to really get this segment of the market growing. However, in the US, there's 520 orphan products on the market approved. In Europe, there's only 180. So there's a disparity there, and this disparity is our opportunity. Really, what we're saying is that Open Orphan will bring these products that are in the US to Europe through a consulting house that is Open Orphan. We will be the pan-European deliverer of these products to rare disease patients across Europe. You might ask, why is there the disparity? Few reasons. Okay, so once you get regulatory approval in the US, you can use that same data, the FDA dossier, for the EMA submission. So you can get the regulatory approval, okay, but it's the reimbursement of that drug. In Europe, it's completely fragmented. So when I talk about reimbursement, I talk about who's going to pay for this drug. And in the US, you get approval, you have 3 different insurance companies who pay across the entire US. In Europe, in the UK, you're probably most familiar with, there's 3 agencies, NICE, the Scottish and the Welsh authorities. In France, there's 14 different agencies. In Italy, there's 48, and in Germany, there's 10. So these companies in the US, and again, since they're rare disease companies, they're not the big pharma. They don't have the depth, they don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to really bring their products to Europe. They're very focused on the US market. So we say we have the expertise through our consulting houses and a lot of the good staff that were in Venn to really bring these products to Europe, and that's an uplift of about 30% of their market revenues if you add the major European markets of the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. So that is our market. That's what we're going after. That is where the increase in revenue will come. So what Open Orphan's mission is, it is a full-service, high-end consulting service for the pharma company. The pharma companies are good at the inception and drug development, They're good at the sales and marketing. We do everything in between, pre-market consulting, clinical trials, most importantly, the regulatory approval, market access, reimbursement, and then hand it off to the pharma companies. So this is the high end of a 25 to 30% margin consulting business that we're after. And again, we'll be a unique franchise in Europe doing that. So that's a multi-pronged strategy. I talked about Venn. We acquired Venn. I talked about the bolt-on activities of Orphan. The next two platforms are really the digital platform, how we're going to engage with the KOLs across Europe, and then the health data is really the genetic data we're going to corral from rare disease patients. So I'm just looking at my time. Venn, I'm not going to go through this because some of you have heard it, but quickly it is a kind of a optimization of Venn. Venn has some really good customers. If you look here, a lot of them are orphan products, Janssen, Prometeor, Boehringer Ingelheim, Genmab, Galapagos, Servier, Pharming, really good companies. Repeat customers have come back and back, but we have about 100 customers with Venn. The problem then was not profitable. It was staff utilization was about 65%. It should have been at 90%. We're currently at about 80%. So that's the correction that's ongoing with Venn. Venn was undervalued. We acquired Venn. Despite its revenues of 14 million, we acquired it for 4 million. So it is a good company. And most companies in this sector would have a valuation of 2 to 3 times revenue. So if it was properly rated, it should have been about 30 million plus. So we acquired for 4. The valuation of Orphan was, as you know, from the prospectus, and we came out with a share price of 5.6. It's currently 6.35. So there's a lot of opportunity here. The goal is to recapitalize. We did that. We raised 4.5 in the market in June. Restructuring ongoing, profit making. So we're correcting the deficiencies within. Then re-rate the company, and that will happen now. It's already happened. We're about 1x sales, which is much different from what it was, but we need to get to about 2 to 3 times sales and launch additional services that I just talked about. The services I talked about as well. This is the kind of revenue growth through acquisition, bolt-ons. And when I talk about bolt-ons, that's not many. We have Venn has offices in Spain, in Paris, in Breda, close to Amsterdam, and we want to acquire one other company in the UK and/or Germany to really be the pan-European provider of the service across Europe. By those bolt-ons, we'll get to revenues about 30 million by 2022, right for consolidation and acquisition. So it is rapid revenue growth, margin accreditation, and value arbitrage is the strategy. Virtual rep. I want to quickly go through this because I want to talk mainly about the next section, but this is a digital engagement platform. You might remember that of those products we're going to now bring to the European market, how do we make the KOLs, physicians who prescribe these drugs, how do we make them aware of these products? And remember, these are products that weren't there before, so they're new products for these patients. So it is a digital engagement platform whereby we have over 4,000 different KOLs, physicians across Europe, who have opted to be part of our database. They come in and we can then sign up pharma companies, those pharma companies who don't have their orphan products on the market in Europe yet, that can engage with these physicians at an email level as introductions, sending over the dossier, talking about what these products can do and what symptoms and disease they treat, and then hand off to the physician and the pharma. So it is kind of, rather than having a tangible sales rep in the field, it is kind of the Facebook of new pharma marketing. It's been used in other sectors. It should work here, and we're rolling that out in the next quarter. So the health data, the final leg of the business strategy. This is kind of the part that I'm most excited about because it is about the data associated with drug development. You might remember I said there's 30 million people in Europe that suffer from a rare disease. Rare disease patients, by definition, they're probably the most clinically analyzed set of patients of any group of patients, maybe other than oncology or cancer patients. They've been on this odyssey trying to understand their disease. They have huge amount of clinical data. Most of them have genetic data also, trying to identify the genetic base of the disease. The reason why they have that is because 95% of rare diseases have a genetic basis. And the one this earlier this evening was one in case. So what we're doing is we're asking under GDPR that those patients would share their data with us in our database. It is a sharing of that data, corralling that data, so it's not languishing in your clinic, doing nothing. It's coming into this database. We will corral it in our database securely, pseudonymized, encrypted, and GDPR compliant. And under GDPR, these patients can allow this data to come into our database. They're the only people that own their data. They own that data, not the clinic, not the physician, not us. It is owned by them. So therefore, they can choose where that data goes, who sees it, and what they do with it. So our model is that we would ask the patients directly and the advocacy groups who work on behalf of these patients to advocate that they share their data with us. It comes into our database. We curate it to some extent whereby it's analyzable anonymously by the pharma companies. We make that accessible to the pharma companies who understand this data and can drive new product development for these rare diseases using this data. And again, it's a well-known fact how they do this, looking for genetically validated targets that can be the base of new drugs. And we will get access fees and milestone payments, but access fees effectively initially from the pharma companies who look at this data, and we will share a component of that back to the patient advocacy groups. We do that for several reasons. First of all, it's fair. Secondly, it will really put the patient and the advocacy groups at the center a little bit, or more centric into the drug development process with pharma companies, which is a good thing anyway. And thirdly, it'll really drive, I think, the resources, the infrastructure, the kind of support that the advocacy groups can put in place for the patients. So again, it is a model whereby we will become the leading broker. This is our aim, to be of rare disease patient data across Europe. Again, this is a global market we can tap into. It's a low-cost collection model. It's low cost because all this data pre-exists. We don't have to generate it. So that's why it's a lower cost than a lot of the other data banks you would hear about. It is really going to be in a format that it's suitable for the pharma companies to look at and really generate the new targets, or identify the new targets that will be the base of the new drug development for these diseases. A lot of them with an unmet need, no treatment available currently. So will assist in the discovery of the genetics of rare diseases. So a lot of benefits for patients, a lot of benefits for pharma companies, and most importantly, a lot of benefits for Open Orphan. Our aim is to collect 10,000 records from that 10 million people in Europe over the next 2 years. The nominal value associated with one record is about 5,000. So that, at a nominal level, is probably valued at 50 million, but that's not what it's worth. That's just a nominal value. Remember, many companies can look at this data over and over. It's a pre-competitive space. They can all look at this. So they can choose to look at it across certain diseases. Maybe not every record they'll look at, but they look at certain diseases. Multiple companies hopefully will look at it, and we have a lot of interest already from about 100 of the 520 companies I talked about earlier. And really what they can do then is identify targets. If they choose to use a target that they identify from our database, they then go into a discovery platform where there's milestone payments back to Open Orphan and royalties on any product that comes out. So I'm just talking about the nominal value here. A lot of excitement. I think as the age of genetics has really come, the data associated with drug discovery is probably more value or equal in value to the therapeutics that come out of that data. So I know I've gone a little bit fast. The slides, and you can all get a copy of the presentation, obviously. These are just precedents in the market showing the value of those deals around data. And this one is showing a little bit of the value of a sample that people are prepared to pay for. I guess the one that most of you might be aware of is the 23andMe deal with Genentech for 3,000 samples, 10 million patients, and so it's about 3,000 per sample value. It's a lot more. 10x Pharmaceutical, 10x Genomics just went to the market, and there was a recent deal with 23andMe and GSK, GlaxoSmithKline as well in the Alzheimer's space, again valued at 300 million. So there's huge value here, huge upside for Open Orphan. So I guess what I was trying to give you a quick snapshot is it is a compelling business case. We're just 3 months into the reverse takeover. We're public now, as I said, that 3 months. We have a lot of work done, a lot of work to do. We believe the new management team will really get everything corrected. Clear for strong strategy. It is the fastest growing segment of the market that we're working in, as well as a large market. And we say we will not come back to the market, dividend within 2 years, and a clearly defined exit strategy. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the floor for Maurice, please, at all?
Does the United States have any difficulty selling its medical products into the European Union?
Yeah, no, because it's still the same company who owns that product selling their product into Europe. So the company who owns the product is still selling that into Europe. We're just doing the service part. We're giving them all the information and the regulatory approval reimbursement to sell it in Europe. If you're asking me more a political question, if Trump would prevent that, I don't think he can do that. It's unless there's some other trade war going on. But no, currently drugs it's a global market in the pharmaceutical sector.
Where are you quoted? Which market?
We're on AIM, and we're also in Euronext. We're in Dublin, Paris, and Amsterdam.
And what's your market cap at present?
The share price, I think, today was 6.35, so about 17.5 million.
Right, so I just want to ask you, you mentioned about the exit strategy on that last slide.
Yeah.
So what is the potential exit strategies you've currently?
Well, I guess what we're building is a franchise in orphan products across Europe. The big clinical research organizations or CROs like IQVIA, Quintiles, Parexel, they don't have a franchise in orphan products. It is the fastest growing market of the drug development sector now. So I think they will have an interest in that. So, we're a public company. Anything can happen, but there's a lot of people interested in this space. We've stolen a march a little bit being public with the bolt-ons we hope to announce soon. So I think that franchise is going to be very attractive together with the genetic data.
Okay, so the plan going forward, when Cathal was here the other week, he mentioned the exit strategy. So
Yeah.
you're sort of planning to have this in place over a period of 12, 18?
Well, I think
months?
so. The bolt-ons will increase revenue. So we hope to be in 20, 30 million revenue soon.
Mm-hmm.
Some bolt-ons might be slightly larger, so it might be up to 50. So at that level of revenues, we will become an attractive target. Right now, we're probably a little bit below the parapet for the big CROs, just because of the revenues. I think the data, though, it just opens up a whole other category of people who might look at this data and might look at Open Orphan as an acquisition target.
So other people, other companies can look at that data as much as you can look at the data?
Only people who pay for access to the data can see the data.
Right. And is that a high cost?
Yeah, I mean, the cost is going to cover the cost to store. It's all going to be stored on the cloud. So the cost is, I'm not going to give you an exact figure, but we will. But what I'm saying is it'll cover the cost to store, the cost to do analysis, and the cost so there's a margin both for us and for the patient advocacy groups.
And that's once they've gone through the process from GDPR?
Yes, exactly.
So the numbers will come down quite significantly?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
What is, I think you just said the current market cap?
Yeah,
Nice.
17.5 million.
Okay.
It's about equivalent to our proposed revenues, yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see the biggest risks?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a challenge. You probably all know hospitals, when you're trying to get data, they're reluctant sometimes to give that away because they believe they own it. I guess, so the impact of GDPR on clinical practice is probably going to be a challenge. I think in rare disease, it's maybe a little bit different because most of these patients already have their data. They have it either on a memory stick or on their computer or on some link we can link into. So the patients can download the data themselves if they have it, or we will provide them with a letter they provide to their clinic or hospital to send us the data. So there may be pushback, and I think that is a risk, but GDPR is kind of the legislation behind, and I think this is going to be a kind of peloton of requests into every organization for this type of data. So there will need to be the ramping up from hospital perspective for this to really deliver the data that's requested by patients. So
Okay.
that's probably the risk. That is a risk that there might be a delay here, but it will happen eventually.
Right, okay. And you mentioned earlier on about the digital engagement platform.
Yes.
Could you just expand a bit more on that? So that gets around the Salesforce team, does it?
It's what?
It gets around having a Salesforce team.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have people driving around to different sites because remember, we're talking about rare diseases. It's a lot of people, but it's very dispersed, so you can't really cover the entire Europe. So with a digital engagement platform, you can talk to your KOLs, physicians on the digital platform, tell them about these diseases. And I think it does a few things. Most physicians, when they're in their clinic, they don't want to be bothered by salespeople. This way, you can do it at a time that suits them. But I think they will in this case because these are products that are not on the market before, so they're new products. So it's a slightly different kind of engagement from KOLs because you're not competing one product against another. It's a new product that their patients didn't have before. So I think there's a lot more willingness on the part of the KOLs to engage.
So these are going to be all unique treatments?
Yes, it'll be the orphan products that are on the market in Europe, bringing them to Europe.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. Any other questions, please? I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.